Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third weekend of our virtual summit. Today, I'm very pleased to have Sabina Pierce with us. She is a professional photojournalist photographer based in Philadelphia. She spent over 25 years capturing images for editorial and commercial assignments for Fortune 500 companies, magazines, and national news outlets, including National Geographic magazine, but her camera always led her back to her love of horses. And so she's going to talk about a project that she's done with National Geographic today. And I'll turn it over to her and welcome Sabina.
Hey, hi everybody. I'm gonna go into content only now, you guys. Never done this before on Zoom, so wish me luck. Okay, here we go. Um, Hello, my name is Sabina Pierce, and I'm a National Geographic explorer. I'd like to talk about my National Geographic project on the Native American Dakota horses. I see their story as a love triangle: the land, the Dakotas, and the people who love them. With about 750 Dakotas worldwide, if you compare that to 1 million racehorses that are born every year, you can understand how they are and how the Dakotas are teetering on extinction. Over centuries, um, sorry guys, I said it's new. Okay, let me get to my next slide. Okay, over centuries, the Dakotas have developed a remarkable emotional intelligence through their innate resilience to not just survive, but to thrive by living feral and familial herds on their ancestral land. Like elephants, their elders continue to pass down the innate wisdom for survival mixed with a cocktail of hardy, diverse DNA that's been crafted as they have shifted through gates from wild to domestic that continues today. But before I dive into the Dakota story, you're probably wondering just what a National Geographic Explorer is. Think the amazing Jane Goodall, Bertie Gregory, or Jacques Cousteau, though I'm happily one of the little guys out in the back barn. The official definition is National Geographic explorers are groundbreaking scientists, conservationists, educators, and storytellers. Each one is infinitely curious about our planet and passionate about helping make it better. I'm a storyteller, if you have not figured that out. It's a lifetime position, which is cool, though I must admit, after I became an explorer, I had to keep the definition in my notes just to get it right. I've always seen myself as a storyteller, though, through the lens of my camera, through passion, and by trade. Yet in my heart, there's always been the horse. It all started as a toddler when I fearlessly climbed into a paddock to be with a pony. Then, when I was 6, I got the first of my many ponies, a little Shetland. She was a real hellcat. She taught me the important skill of how to climb back on while being dragged across a field. Then, in my 20s, while on an undercover photo story in Canada, came Toby. She was rescued as a foal, headed for slaughter. Sorry, guys, she died. Then last October, I lost her at 27 to colic. I've always thought of her as my karma project for all my ponies I've had to let go of as I grew up. Luckily, last spring, the universe brought a feral Dakota into my life, but I'll get back into him later. In my life, there's always been and always seems to find its way to the horse. In 2006, I was honored by Time magazine with Best Photography of the Year for my intimate behind the scenes photography of the famous Kentucky Derby winner, Barbaro, who freakishly broke his leg in the Preakness. When PennVet offered me the assignment, I was tickled pink. And when he was euthanized almost after making it, 9 months later, I was gutted. Then in 2000, the Wyoming tourism paved my way to photograph the Pryor Mountain Mustangs. It was my first chance to spend time with wild horses. It was fascinating to see how they were not curious of humans at all. I was neither friend nor foe, I was invisible. And it wasn't until this project that my camera found its way back to the horse. So when National Geographic gave me the green light to dive deep into Dakota's story, I was elated. Initially, I wanted to explore if they were the missing horses of North America's timeline. But quickly, I became fascinated on their survival story and what the heck are people flying them to France for? But this wasn't a project just about telling their story through my lens. I was diving headfirst into researching, writing, interviewing, and entwining it all into a story map. The Nakota's world became mine. I dug deep, going down one rabbit hole after another. My journey took me on several trips to the vast, beautiful northern plains of North Dakota that the Nakota call home. Then I was off to Texas, New York, and New Jersey, and eventually back to Pennsylvania, where the story started at the Nakota Preserve, where I met my very first Nakota horse. I created a colorful educational story map filled with striking images. It's designed not just to tell the Nakota story, but to educate and raise awareness of their ongoing fight for survival and how best to save these endangered horses. I'll continue to spread the word through talks, social media, and hopefully it will be published in the magazine to hit a wider, diverse audience. Nakotas have taken a spot in my heart. Like one Nakota person said to me early on, "Have you drunk the Kool-Aid yet?" I wasn't sure what they meant, but now I do. So at this point, hopefully you're wondering, who are these Nakota horses? Though to understand the Dakotas aren't just any horses, their roots run deep, tracing back through ancient migrations, extinction events, reintroductions, and even cultural survival. Because before we can appreciate who they are today, we need to understand where all horses came from. So I made you this cute little map from ChatGPT. Horses evolved in North America, not just once, but twice. The last one was about 1 million years ago, migrating northward, crossing back and forth over the Bering Strait into Eurasia, exchanging their DNA each time. But when the Bering Strait submerged 10,000 years ago, it cut that connection off. Horses on both continents were isolated, setting them off on a completely different evolutionary path. According to scientists, horses kept evolving in Eurasia and were first domesticated around 42,000 years ago in Kazakhstan, eventually expanding across the continent. Meanwhile, back here in North America, scientists believed wild horses faced a harsher fate. Food was scarce and the ice kept spreading. The horses were thought to have gone extinct around 8 to 6,000 years ago. Though as the permafrost melts and the DNA is unearthed, the dates keep getting pushed closer to us. But that's not the end of the story here in North America. In the early 1500s, Spanish explorers rode into North America on horses from the South. Though it's important to note and respect that some Native American tribes say the horses have always been here. One of them, the Lakota, sees them as a gift from their creator. That horses are woven into their culture and identity. They symbolize power, personal drive, unwavering passion, and boundless freedom. And this is where the Nakota stories begin, with the Lakota. Their name for horses is Sunkawakan, or Holy Sacred Dog. The wild horses that roam the northern plains, the Nakota's ancestors were tamed by the Lakota and bred with stolen and traded horses from other tribes, European settlers, and soldiers. They created herds of prized war horses and buffalo runners that ranchers and soldiers admired. With horses underneath them, the Lakota became great, powerful warriors that swept across the northern plains. So it was devastating for the Lakota in 1881, after 4 years in exile in Canada. After the Battle of Little Bighorn, they had to surrender during a brutal winter, their war horses to the U.S. Army in North Dakota. The Lakota tribes and their horses were starving, freezing, and dying. Chief Sitting Bull was promised amnesty, but was imprisoned instead. With their horses seized and sold off, they were given draft horses, some land, and told they were farmers now. As Hunkpapa Lakota elder John Eagle states, "They took our horses, they took our land, they took our children, but we're still here." But that's another story. 60 of the Lakota mares were bought for breeding by a local French rancher, Marquis de Moore, only to be sold a few years later to another rancher, both looking to breed these hardy Lakota mares to make their perfect horse. It was an era of open range ranching out west, and some of these horses roamed off, disappearing back into the land, their land. Mixing with feral ranch horses, they lived free and wild, and some of these horses roamed off, disappearing back into the land, their land. Coexisting with wildlife, they became the last wild horses in the Dakotas and the origins of the Nakotas. Then in 1956, they were accidentally fenced in when their home became the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Some thought they'd be safe, kind of like eminent domain, but it wasn't so. The National Park Service saw them as invasive and wanted them gone. And they could, as the National Park Service was exempted from the 1971 Wild Burro and Horse Act that protected wild horses. At one point, they almost succeeded, culling the wild horses till there were only half a dozen left. But like the Lakota, they're still here. And that's a whole other story, too. In the 1980s, two ranching brothers, Frank and Leo Kuntz, were the first to recognize the brains of the wild horse in the park. At first, they bought a few at Roundup to breed for a 500-mile race out west. They were impressed by their bone and hoof. They'd seen these horses run for miles from helicopters during roundups. Though soon, they fell in love with something else, something more important, their feral brains, which have an ability to think before reacting, born as a way to conserve energy, because in the wild, you never know when food or water can turn scarce. Not long after their purchase, they discovered the park was inserting domesticated stallions and killing off the park ones that were protecting their mares. They suspected the park was trying to erase all the native genetics by claiming they were making a more sellable horse for culling, as nobody wanted to buy Indian ponies, as they were called back then. Racing against time, Leo and Frank started buying all the Indian ponies after park roundups before their DNA disappeared forever. Once they thought they got them all and had enough to become a breed, they named them Nakota, an homage to their home state of North Dakota. The fact that it sounded like a tribe, well, that was just a coincidence. With the hopes of protection through legitimacy, they created a conservancy, a breed, registry, and later, with the help of the Nakota Preserve, a biobank to preserve the genetics. It became the Kuntz life work to save the Nakotas. It's been 50 years, and Leo's passed, and Frank, 74, is battling prostate cancer. He lost his pastors years ago, parted ways with the Nakota Horse Conservancy, and struggles financially to care for his 180 feral Nakota herd on his 6-acre ranch. They're sustained on his disability check, occasional horse sales, and sweat from working others' land in exchange for hay. He occasionally gets land to graze some on, but it's not an ideal situation. On my last visit, Frank thought he had a few good more years in him to find them a good home. That was his wish before he passes, is to see his Nakota herd safe on their own land. Meanwhile, the Nakota Conservancy, with the second largest herd, continues its work through line breeding to continue their herd of Nakotas. Though with no prairie land of their own and the constant threat of losses to sub-zero temperatures and predators, their fight to save the Dakotas remains an uphill battle too. So some will ask, so what? They're just horses. What's their superpower, their secret sauce? Why should we protect them? I wanted that answer too. So I traveled to the feral herds in North Dakota with my cameras, gear, and my little terrier Tips. I was hoping the Nakotas might let me in on their secret. I walked among the feral herds, communing with them on their ancestral land. I wanted to see and feel the prairie under my feet, to hear what it had to say. Then I crossed time zones to the origins of the Nakotas, the cavernous Badlands, to visit with the wild horses in the Teddy Roosevelt Park. Then I circled back to Standing Rock Reservation to connect with Hunkpapa Lakota Elder and Preservation Officer John Eagle, who teaches equine therapy with a small herd of Nakotas. For John and his family, it's about reconnecting their people back to their horses. It can be an uphill battle, as so much time has passed since they lost their horses. But they keep trying, because for them, this isn't just work, it's their path. When I walked among the feral herds, the mares would step forward, curious but cautiously, with foals nearby. I greeted them in their language, blowing gently into their nose. I could see their nostrils moving as they soaked in my breath. Just like dogs, they were filing me away in the Rolodex of scents as either friend or foe. Luckily, I passed as a friend. And here's a little video. If one was shy, I turned my back and let them sneak up for a sniff of my hair or offer my hand. Before long, I'd be surrounded by Nakotas. I had been accepted by the herd. One might nibble at my shoe, or another tug on my camera strap. Anything new or foreign to their land was fair game to their curious minds. Others would let their foals follow me around. I even had a young Nakota filly at the conservancy follow me around so much I used her as a tripod. And if I had Tippy with me, well, the Nakota mares just had to check her out. They were so fascinated by her unknown scent. I had to hide her behind my back, but they didn't care. They surrounded me wanting a closer look. I ended up carrying her back to the ATV with the herd on my heels. On one trip to photograph the origins of the Nakotas, the wild horses in the Teddy Roosevelt National Park. It was late in the day and I was out scouting with chasing horses when, by chance, a stallion fighting with his son came running up a ravine where we were. He caught sight of Tips beside me and came running towards me. With my heart pounding, I pulled my camera off my eye, waving my arms wildly high above me, staring straight at him. I was trying to make myself big, hoping to scare him off long enough to get her to safety. Luckily, he paused. I scooped her up and sprinted to the pickup. With Tips safe, I dashed back to photograph the stallion's fight and the wide eyed mares and foals frantically running around trying to get out of their way. Early next morning, I went out. I was on my own, and I decided to hike out to the wild herd I spotted, relaxing in the morning sun. The sun was coming up quick, so I decided I better bring Tips with me. As we made our way in on a bison trail, trying to avoid ground cactuses, by chance I glanced behind me only to see a little strawberry roan filly a few yards behind me, curiously sneaking up on us, wanting a better look at Tips. She was as harmless as the day was long, but after the stallion incident the night before and the park's rule of 20 yards separation, I instinctively went big to scare her away. I felt bad, as she had the kindest eyes, and I gave her quite a fright. And just like her, I longed for that connection too. So it was heartbreaking to find out a few months later she died after a park roundup for a wound caused during the roundup. She had walked several miles after being released, only to succumb to the infection. My journey then took me down to Texas to photograph Michael Battenfield, a natural horsemanship trainer with a knack for helping feral Nakotas accept a bridle, saddle, and a rider into their lives. He understands how a feral horse views life compared to domestics. I wanted to continue to photograph Greystoke too, a feral Nakota with one blue eye. In Lakota tradition, the blue eye, the watch eye, signifies one foot in the spiritual world. Greystoke had been purchased by a friend after I'd introduced her to Nakotas and had gone to Texas with Battenfield to be trained. I spent a few days photographing Michael and his daughters as they worked with formerly feral Nakotas, training them to carry humans across bridges, work woods, and fields. Stuff can be really scary to a feral Nakota. I could see Greystoke's mind working, trying to meet Battenfield's expectations, with which hit on one of the attributes I heard about Nakotas. They will that they will align with one human. I could see through my lens Gray wanting to please the human that had fed him, sheltered him, and watered him since he had left the prairie, since he left his Nakota herd. When I got back home, I dug into the Nakota's DNA, zooming with DNA experts at Texas A&M and Cornell who had studied their DNA. They helped me understand the reports and understand the pitfalls of the tests. How each lab has a unique set of horse breeds that they test against, so each lab can come up with the different conclusions based on what breeds they test against. Sadly, though, they found no missing North American horse, just ancient DNA threads shaped by both natural selection and human herds. In the end, Nakotas were not saved by purity, but by their individual diverse DNA. They are, in a way, glorified mutts, and that's one of their strengths. Now, back to on the East Coast, I looked under every stone. I ran up to New York City to the Museum of Natural Sciences to meet with paleontologist Ross McPhee to try to understand how different the current horses in North America were DNA wise to the ones that were here before they crossed over into Asia. Then countless Zooms with Harvard anthropologist Castle McLaughlin, who researched the park horse's connection to the Lakota and worked with Frank and Leo in the 80s on forming and protecting the Nakota breed. Then I climbed on the back of a few Nakotas, including Greystoke, and this is Moon, to understand this unique human connection owners talked about. Was it different than the connection with my domestic horse of over 20 years? And could I feel what one owner described as think avatar? And you know what? I could. I could hear what they were moting. It was amplified with a clear signal. Okay, so now I knew first person it was true, but how? Again and again, I was brought back to the land and the herd. I recalled how one French Nakota owner flying 6 feral Nakota mares to France mentioned the ones they bred in captivity in France seemed to be missing something, seemed to be missing that feral edge. Their human connection felt duller, she said, than the ones born on the prairie. And I could see it too with the Nakotas I'd met born off the prairie versus ones born off. So that was it. That was their superpower. Their frequency dulls. They are no longer learning knowledge from the herd to survive the harsh prairie. Humans are providing food, water, and shelter. The harsh northern plains and the familial herd is where they draw their strength, their instincts, their problem solving, and emotional intelligence. Over the centuries, the resilient, smart ones survive. Another important key is their gift of adaptation. They know how to walk in two worlds, the wild and the domestic. They know when to flee and when to trust humans. But their greatest gift to us, that's their super shape is their greatest gift to us. It's the human and animal connection they bring to us. Shaped by the land and carried through the herd and extended to us. That's their superpower. Nakotas meet us on a higher frequency. Nakotas forgive us of our human failings and decide to trust us anyway. Because these very qualities that kept them alive, their sensitivity, their awareness, their ability to read our energy and intention are the same qualities that open doors for human healing. In their presence, people feel seen, accepted, safe, and loved. And this is why they need dedicated land, protections, and coordinated natural breeding programs to thrive. They can heal us if we let them. But you know what? I want to tell you about Felix. In Spanish, Felix means happiness, and that's exactly what he is. The best way I can describe him, the best way I can describe being with him is it's like a good date. The ones that you realize afterwards how much fun you had and can't wait to see them again. So when I heard last May that Frank was trailering a few feral Nakotas for sale to the Nakota Preserve, I took pause. I thought, with his health issues, this might be my last chance to bring a feral Nakota into my life. I had just retired my Canadian horse, but I wasn't ready to stop riding. But owning two horses was more than I could afford on an artist's salary. Then my friend, the one who owns Greystoke, Colleen, made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Get a Nakota, she said, and I'll give you half price board. It'd be nice to have a little herd of Nakotas at my barn. She had drank the Kool-Aid. You could see the feral language with her two Nakotas at her barn, and she loved it. Okay, I thought, you've ridden other people's Nakotas, you've done the research, you've walked in their footsteps, but what about that bond? That deep soul level connection with their one human that every Nakota owner waxes on about. As an explorer, it wasn't enough to hear about it. I had to see if it was true, and the only way was to bring one into my life, to be my Nakota. At first, I felt guilty taking him off his ancient lands, away from his herd. It was the only home he'd ever known. But then I realized Dakotas don't really leave the prairie, they carry it inside them and make you their herd. So when Dakotas leave their feral herd behind, they become ambassadors for their breed. And that's Felix. He's my Nakota. Oh, I think he really picked me. He's 4 years old, fresh off the prairie. When I met him, he was very feral, but true to Nakota form. He was curious to meet a new human. With an exchange of breath, he had never known a halter or how to lead. He's the size of a large pony right now, which is honestly perfect for me. But like all Nakotas, will keep growing slowly till he's 8. Nakotas grow slower than domesticated horses, as the northern prairie's growing season is short and lacks nutrition. Add in the harsh sub-zero winters that can make it hard to thrive, but Nakotas have figured that out too. Felix is a beautiful bay roan built with a classic composition and a smooth gait, a mix of the wild horses that roam the northern plains and the Spanish explorers' influence. He carries beautiful scars from scuffles with other bachelor studs in North Dakota, and probably a few more from sorting out his new place in the herd. He is confident, smart, and chill, but he'll happily leave the herd for a walk in the woods with me or hang out rooting around in my SUV for treats. He really loves banana chips. He's curious to explore. The first time we went in the woods, the darkness that enveloped us gave him deep pause. He moved closer to me and touched my shoulder for connection. His whole life had been out in the vast prairie. So when he's nervous or unsure, he checks in with me like a dog. He leans in and gently touches my arm or shoulder, just to let me know he needs a little human connection. Sometimes when we're standing still, he wraps his head around me and lets out this big, deep sigh, as if we're sharing the weight of the world together. Which reminded me of what Dr. Doug Anzik, an equine DNA expert at Cornell, said to me. The way you save a breed from extinction is by having the world fall in love with them. And that's when it clicked. Maybe my job isn't just to tell their story through photograph and story maps. Maybe my job, with Felix at my side, is to help the world fall in love with his herd, his Nakotas. So that's my, I know it was a little quick, but I talk fast. I'm from the East Coast. And I have here, you can help if you hit the QR code. And I want to thank National Geographic for funding this project to help save the Nakotas.
Thanks, Sabina. That was great. Anyone have any questions? If you do, put them into the chat. And I also do want to say that I believe it's on the first, later today or tomorrow. I hope to have it all set up. Anushka from France will be on to talk about the Nakota experience that she has going on in June, and maybe some more updates on Frank and what's going on with them. So let's see. Krista wants to know, is there a place to read your stories on Barbara and the Prior Mountains and this Nakota story? Do you have like a website where they can read your works?
Um, I did a WordPress years ago and then I let it lapse. But that's a good push to tell the story uh, of Barbaro and being with the Fire Mountain horses because it really did. I think every step has given me a little bit closer to where I am now with my, being on my journey with horses. And Barbara was probably the most amazing, most sentinel horse I'd ever met in my life. And then going from there to then being with the Prior Mountains, who just we were invisible. Um, they needed nothing from humans. Was really fascinating.
What I just said about the upcoming presentations is that on February 1st, I believe Anushka, she's been working with the Nakotas in France, is going to give a presentation on the Nakota experience that she's going to have here in North Dakota in June. And she may have some updates also on Frank and his herd. There have been some things happening there too. So um, people really enjoyed the presentation, Sabina. When did you go to the Prior Mountains? Someone's asking.
I went in 2008. It was right after Barbaro died, and the Wyoming Tourism Bureau offered me to come up there, pay my way, whatever project I wanted to do with horses. And I had seen Ginger Catherine's, project or her nature on nature of, the Prior Mountain, Mustangs and Cloud. And of course, like everybody else who loves horses, I fell in love with that. So I jumped at the chance to have my, to go up and spend a week with these horses. And it was, they're really amazing. I have some amazing photographs. They're actually on my website of them. Um, and there's some photos of Barbaro on my website too. That was quite a journey of the people at New Bolton and the doctors, the nurses, even the owners putting everything into trying to save this horse. And the horse understanding and being smart enough to understand that they were there helping him. It was really amazing to be behind the scenes with just witnessing all of that. So the two were very different.
And what is your website? What's your web address?
Oh, my website is really easy. It's Sabina Shoots, SHOOTS. You can find it on my Instagram, which is Sabina Shoots, and my email is sabinashoots@gmail. I kind of branded myself to make it easy for people.
Krista wants to know, how can we help get your Nakota story published in Nat Geo magazine?
Um, right now it's continuing the work with the editors at the magazine. I've been working with one editor who really loves the project. Unfortunately, the magazine's had a lot of they've gone through a lot of transitions and they're kind of overburdened right now. The editors. So I'm just I keep on working with them, and if I need to come out to North Dakota again for photos, I certainly will. To see whatever they think's missing to push this forward. So I'm all in with the Dakotas and getting this in the magazine. I'm going to do my very best, but right now, like I said, they've had cutbacks, and it's just a lot of work. So it's a gentle push with them. It could one National Geographic explorer said it took him 10 years to get his project in. So hopefully it won't take that long. But he did get the front cover, so 10 years might be worth it.
Is there any way that we can help generate interest or show that there's an interest in it, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I guess just I don't think it really works that way, to be honest. I think it's just more convincing them how amazing these horses are. So, sending them this talk and sending them other stuff I do and continuing the journey with Felix. And just the last that they wanted from me was pictures from historical photos from, of, like wild horses in North Dakota and in the Dakotas. And so I was working with the historical societies out there, trying to find some. And so if anybody has any interesting photos that they know about, please like send me a link that way.
Um, Krista said she's a member of Nat Geo and subscribes. So is there an editor that she can write to and request the story? Not that one letter will help, but she thought she would ask. So
Oh, that's really sweet. I don't think it, I mean, you can say that you saw my talk and that you would really love to see it published.
if you want to, what I can do, if you have the stories that they're asking about to send, I can add them to the website. Like if you have PDFs of them, I can add them to like where your link is on the website so people can look at them if you don't have a website. Does that help at all?
Oh, oh yeah, on my website, there's a bunch of my photographs of the Nakotas so far.
But the
If,
stories, like the prior stories and all of that.
yeah, I could, it's on my website. If you just go to Sabina Shoot, I will make them, I'll open up those pages and make them like available again. I mean, I think they're available, but I'll just make sure that they're more visible.
How many
So
Nakotas do you think are left in the US?
This is the thing. I think it goes up and down all the time. I mean, there's the US and then there's France. So I feel like they really haven't made a lot of headway. And I think more importantly, it's not about how many there is in the US. It's about keeping them feral, keeping that feral, because that's the secret sauce. I feel like the more we breed them domestically, the more we dumb them down to become domestic. I see that when I spend time with some that are domesticated, that were born in like other places, and you can just see the edge dulling. And that's my biggest concern. Is this is what makes them so unique? Is their feralness? Is their this high emotional intelligence? And this way that they can kind of tap into you and read you at a higher level than a domesticated horse, because again, it's about them needing to survive and then passing that on to like figuring out how to how to work with that emotional intelligence to figure out who's friend or foe and work with us. I mean, I think John Eagle said in one of his talks about how he was doing a clinic, and one of the horses you saw went over to one girl. He had a bunch of kids, and he went over then and asked her if she was okay, if anything was going on. And I think she had had a death in her family. She had some kind of tragedy, and the Nakotas could sense it. So I think they read us. I feel like they're very much aligned with us in that aspect, and I think
Mentioning
that's their secret sauce.
mentioning John Eagle Sr., he'll be giving his talk next week. He had to reschedule his from the beginning of the summit because he had a family emergency. So, and I think that that's a story that he talked about last year at our summit. So, if you're interested in the Dakotas, he's got a different, Native American twist on this, and just relationships with horses in general. He's really a great person to talk to, which I'm sure you're aware. Um, does anybody else have any other questions for Sabina? How did you get started? I know that I met Sabina through Frank, and like she said, we've been to the park many times, and I love the picture behind you because I took that picture. Um, it was
Yeah.
it was Sabina taking pictures of the horses, so it was me taking pictures of her taking pictures. Um, and I'm glad that you enjoy it and you've made it part of your world. But I don't know how you came into the Nakota world. Was it? I'm guessing in Pennsylvania. If you want to
Yeah,
talk about that a little bit.
sure. I came in through the Nakota Preserve, but actually it was somebody I met through Barbaro. I think of him a bit as a patron at this point. But because
Can
he's
I just
helped.
stop you for a minute? The Nakota Preserve is where, and do you want
It's
to
in
talk about that for a minute?
Okay, so the Nakota Preserve is in Chester Springs, and it's a link. It's
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, in Chester Springs, Pennsylvania. And Christine Capriccio McGowan, she now Boatwright, she started it to help complement getting resources out to North Dakota as a nonprofit to help Frank. Um, and she's done an amazing job. She's got about 8 Nakotas there. She does clinics. She brings Nakotas down from North Dakota with Frank, and then has had Michael Battenfield up to do clinics with people who have Nakotas, because owning a feral horse is very different than owning a domestic horse. And it's just been amazing. And so I heard about these horses through Buzz, who I met through Barbaro, and he was friends with Christine and knew her father, and he knew I loved horses. And he then, put me in touch with her, and I went out, and that's when I first met my first Nakota horse. And I could see how their language, how they came and even, checked you out, and they just, the language was there immediately with me. I could just see this higher emotion. And I was just, drawn in and curious. And then I had to go, and then I went out to North Dakota. She put me in touch with Frank, and with my own money, I went out and went to see Frank and did all that. And Buzz actually then gave me the money back for that, which was awesome, because I had to do scouting trips to then present to National Geographic. So then at the Storyteller Summit in National Geographic, I did a work in progress, which I got up and I spoke for 3 minutes with about 10 photos, and pushed the story forward. And I think it was because I did that, and they saw the story, they saw the photos, they went for it. So it's a long intertwine, it's a journey. All this is a journey, and you can look back and connect the dots.
Well, I'm glad that you made your way into my world, and I'm glad that you made your way into the Nakota world. Everybody enjoyed the presentation, that everyone's saying that. So thank you again for doing this. And we have another presentation coming up at noon Mountain Time today, and then another one at 2, and then we've got a whole bunch scheduled for tomorrow. I don't know if you have anything you want to say to wrap things up, or anybody have any last questions for Sabina? All right.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks everybody for showing up, and please just keep on looking into and following the Nakota's journey. These horses really are special. I mean, I wouldn't be pushing this and devoting my life at this point to them too, if you didn't if they weren't worthy of it, because they really are. They're just unbelievable, and having Felix just cements it, because I've done the full journey, and I feel like I've done the due diligence to help push these horses forward, and let's try and save them. There's only 750 worldwide. I mean, that's nothing. I mean, when you compare it to a million racehorses that are born every year, it's just amazing these horses have survived. They really can help us. And I think right now society needs to be healed. And I'd love to see these horses get a bigger play in that. And I think if you come to Anushka's presentation, you'll see the next step forward as she works with a few other people to push forward Nakota tourism, which is going to be, I think, a really cool thing. Because it's like Dr. Doug Anzik said, the way you save these horses is you get the world to fall in love with them. So thank you for coming and taking time to listen.
Thank you, Sabina. We appreciate it. And thank you everyone for being here. I'll see you at the next presentation. Thanks. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. Bye.
Bye.